Thank you all so much for coming out. My name is Ross. I'll be your MC today. I'd like to start off by acknowledging the land that we are on, which is the unceded territory of the Massachusetts, Wampanoag, and Pawtucket people. As we do the work that we're here to do today, we've got to remember the violence that has been perpetrated against Native people in this country and the resistance that those communities have put up against colonization and genocide for centuries, which continues today as Indigenous communities fight against forced development of their lands. It can be seen here in our own state, in southern Mass, where developers are clear-cutting pine barrens against the wishes of Native communities. And it can also be seen out in Minnesota, where Enbridge is trying to build Line 3, an oil pipeline. Some of you have heard of it, I can tell. We're not fans, none of us. Line 3 is an oil pipeline that would run through untouched wetlands, and every day out there in Minnesota, Indigenous activists are facing increased violence at the hands of police who are being paid by Enbridge to destroy treaty-protected lands and imprison water protectors as they fight to keep their homes and families safe. For my fellow non-Indigenous folks here today, I encourage you all to go home and do your own research on the history of Indigenous activism in this country and on the communities that continue to live here in this country alongside us. No matter how much we as allies think we might know, there's always much more to learn. And a specific reference, if you're looking for one, that I would recommend is a book called The Red Deal, which was written by the Red Nation, which is a coalition of Indigenous activists. It basically is a book that analyzes and picks apart the Green New Deal and asks how we can really change this world in a way that honors and respects Indigenous communities and centers their desires as we fix all of these issues that we've caused over the last several hundred years. As climate organizers and allies of Indigenous people, we need to always remember that there is no environmental justice without Indigenous sovereignty and justice for Native communities.
My name is Johnny Curit, member of the Tunica Biloxi tribe of Louisiana, originally from New Orleans. Thank you. And I'm president of the board of directors of the North American Indian Center of Boston. So, as is our practice at NACOP, we recognize this area, Greater Boston, as the traditional indigenous territory of the Massachusetts Nation, who continue to this day in part through their lineal descendants, the Massachusetts tribe at Ponkapog. And in making this acknowledgement of the land, we are making certain agreements with our host tribe. One such agreement is to support every effort by our hosts for the rematriation of all land and natural resources back to the original peoples. I'm also very struck today we don't have the backdrop of the State House, but I think we have something far more profound. Behind me is this memorial to the 54th Regiment. And so I just wanted to call that into mind, call into the mind all of the ancestors of Black and Indigenous peoples who have fought for this land, who have stewarded this land, and have brought us to this day and this time, perhaps not in the systems of inequity, but have certainly made sure that all of us here are the descendants of survivors of so many years of extraction, so many years of inequity, so many years of injustice. And it is profound that we are here under this memorial of ancestors, and then also being led by our youth into a future in which we dismantle all of these systems. So I thank you all, the young people today. I thank you. I call in the ancestors today. I call in all the people that are buried in this land to watch over this action. So, Pikach, thank you. I'll be talking a little bit later.
Let's hear it. Many different communities across the state that Baker has been neglecting for years, despite many calls to action from activists who are here today. We're fighting for Indigenous communities in the state facing forced development of their land without the consent of Native people. We're here fighting for East Boston, which is facing an electrical substation proposed by Eversource to be built just a few feet away from a children's playground. We're also here fighting for Weymouth, Massachusetts, which is facing a fracked gas compressor station built by Enbridge that has already had, Alice, what is it, 6 emergency shutdowns this year since construction was finished in the last few months. And we are also here fighting for Peabody, which is facing a gas and oil burning power plant without any kind of community health or environmental impact assessment. So we are demanding that the government acts on each of these injustices by doing the following. Move the East Boston substation to Logan Airport in order to protect the children and residents living in East Boston. Shut down the Weymouth compressor station due to repeated failures, massive gas leaks, and opposition from local residents because of health and safety risks. Ban all development on Indigenous lands without Indigenous consent. Pass the Massachusetts Indigenous Legislative Agenda. And confirm the Peabody Power Plant is not dangerous by conducting an environmental impact report, completing a community health impact assessment, and updating the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act process from over 6 years ago with more recent guidelines from the Next Generation Climate Bill. All right, now that I've got all of those things out of the way.
Inviting us here and helping get our message out. Recently, North Shore organized to stop the proposed People Power Plant in Peabody, Mass. Governor Baker and other officials pride themselves on the claim that Massachusetts is a leader on environmental and climate justice issues. And yet, just this past Thursday, the state allowed $170 million in public bonds to be issued by the Department of Public Utilities to build a third fossil fuel burning dirty peaker plant in Peabody. That fails to protect public interest and community health. They can't have it both ways. They can't say that we are a champion of the environment and then allow a brand new fossil fuel plant to be built, especially now after the International Panel on Climate Change report We know it is not the time to add new fossil fuel infrastructure. How can they allow this? How can they allow a project that goes directly against the provisions of their 2021 climate law that require a comprehensive health and environmental review with consideration of reliability, equity, and the impact on the climate, not just the cost, before they can proceed? We know now that the 6-year-old plan for the new Peabody Peaker did not include any alternatives being investigated to use instead of fossil fuels. And we all know how much has changed in 6 years. We know that there are viable, cheaper, alternative solutions to providing backup power. This isn't generating power. This is power we need just in case. The Environmental Justice Area map reflecting the 2020 census shows that the Peaker plant is within 1 mile of 8 environmental justice communities. That's 10,840 people in Peabody, Danvers, and Salem. 5,188 households. The plant itself is now in an EJ area. If this project was considered today under new regulations, it could not be built within 5 miles of any environmental justice area. How much do these communities have to suffer? Neighborhoods around the plant already have higher rates of respiratory illness than elsewhere in Massachusetts. A child born in our zip code has a 10% increased chance of getting asthma by the age of 10 than a child born in a zip code that does not have a fossil fuel burning plant. We have a gas pipeline connected to the two 52-year-old existing peaker power plants along the Waters River, as well as nearby electric transmission lines. The area has had a sad history of pollution from the time of the Industrial Revolution. It includes 2 Superfund sites and the dangers that come from human error with volatile components, such as that which caused the Danvers explosion that occurred in the Danvers Port neighborhood along this river in 2006. Breathe Clean North Shore is not giving up yet, nor are our allies, Massachusetts Climate Action Network and Community Action Works. We seek signatures for our petition to the Secretary of Environmental Affairs to reopen the MEPA review of the Peabody Peaker. In addition to reopening the environmental review, we support the call of the Peabody Board of Health and hundreds of other boards of health across the state who are asking for a comprehensive health assessment before things get started. Whatever was reviewed in 2015 should be reviewed again in 2021 before we commit to 30 years of burning more fossil fuel, or if fossil fuels become illegal, we will at the least be paying for it for 30 years. Although the communities of the Waters River will receive all of the health and environmental risks, signatures from residents of 14 other Massachusetts communities who will pay for this plant are needed. We need signatures from Boylston, Holden, Hull, Mansfield, Marblehead, Shrewsbury, South Hadley, Sterling, Wakefield, West Boylston, and Russell. It's important to note that 2 communities, Chicopee and Holyoke, pulled out of this arrangement with Emwick and will not have to pay for this plant. You can help by signing our petition. A link is posted to it from our website at breathecleannorthshore.org, or you can scan the QR code on the flyer here, and it will automatically be registered online. Please share this petition with your friends and continue to make your voices heard. Thank you for your support.
4 river residents against the compressor station, or FRACS. They've been leading the fight against the Weymouth compressor station. They also provided us with this amazing plywood cutout of the governor today. So I'm going to hand it over to Alice. Let's hear it, everyone, for Alice.
Thank you, Russ. And thank all of you for being here. Thank you, XR and Sunrise, for inviting me to speak. And I'm going to stand in the shade and make sure that everyone can hear me. I have a relatively loud voice, I have to say. So, we've had some really bad news over the past week for river campers. We've had bad news locally and nationally. So locally, Enbridge is back. They are going to be digging up the entire site that they just constructed because they forgot that they were in a saltwater environment. And they forgot to put down foundational safety equipment that would keep the pipes from corroding and keep the building from having arc flashes of electricity, because salt water conducts electricity a lot. So they have announced that they are coming back to dig up the entire property. They will be digging and constructing from now until December, from 7 in the morning till 7 at night, 6 days a week. How wonderful for all of the neighbors. How wonderful for the people who have to breathe in the dust and the dirt of the coal ash that has sat there for over a century. So that's the bad news locally. And of course the bad news nationally or worldwide was the IPCC report that Suni mentioned, and that we have literally 9 years to turn this around. And in those 9 years, things aren't going to get better, even if we stop today. The Globe reported today that from 1970 until about 2018, Boston experienced 4 days a year like this. By 2030, it will be 40. We can't stop that. By 2070, it will be 90 days a year like this in Boston. We can't stop that. So that's the bad news. The good news would be if we do the right things, if we pressure Governor Baker, the powers that be, the bureaucracies, President Biden and every one of them, into understanding that this is a pivotal moment where they have the opportunity to either save the planet or destroy it. And we have to convince them of that. So there was sort of a meme about this event that Charlie Baker, in fact, has been a criminal. He has perpetrated crimes against the people of Massachusetts and of the world, actually, because the more fossil fuel we use, it just makes everything worse for everybody. And it's a harsh word. Is Charlie Baker a criminal? Yeah. With a swipe of a pen, he made Weymouth take this compressor station. We have proven time and again that Enbridge, Al Monaco of Enbridge, another criminal, Enbridge is incapable of doing the right thing. Are their mouths open? They're lying. And Governor Baker, who is a great friend to Enbridge, made sure that that compressor station was built. Made absolutely sure. And told us time and time again that his hands were tied. He said it again last week. Last week, his hands are still tied. He can't do anything about this. And so, yes, he is a criminal because he made this happen. So what do you do with criminals? A governor who twice vetoed the Next Generation Climate Bill, a governor who continues to move us toward more fossil fuels. And I'm not sure, but we talked about East Boston, we talked about West Boston, and Weymouth, and Sandusville. Little Charlton, is on schedule to have an enormous LNG facility placed there. And how are they going to get the LNG out of there? They're going to put it on trucks. And those trucks are going to be on the highways and byways of Massachusetts and the region. And poor little Charlton, they can't fight Charlie Baker. And this is going to happen. So when Charlie Baker opens his mouth and says, I'm a climate champion, don't believe him. He is a climate criminal, and it's time for him to go.
Let's do it for Alice, everyone! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Climate change has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Climate change has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Climate change has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Climate change has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Climate change has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Climate change has got to go! Woo! Thank you guys. All right. Thank you so much, Alice, for speaking, and thank you again for reminding us that all this stuff that we're hearing in the background right now, all of this construction noise, this is what they want to do in people's neighborhoods. This is what they want to do in residential areas. Do you want to be hearing this all throughout the night, right down the street from your house? No! That's why we need to keep showing up for people's communities so that they don't have these devastating construction projects that have long-term health effects on the people that live there. So for our final speaker today, I'm going to invite my friend Jean-Luc back up here to speak again. As he said earlier, he is the president of NACOP, and he's going to be speaking for us today. So let's give it a hand for Jean-Luc again.
Thank you. Yes. So as Ross said, I'm Jean-Luc Parit. I'm a member of the Tunica Biloxi tribe of Louisiana, originally from New Orleans. And when it was asked of all of us why we're out here, why we're fighting, my brain immediately went to my niece back home in Louisiana, my sister who is about to have twins at the end of October. And so the reason why I'm here and why I'm fighting is that I want these children to know that as they grow up that their uncle did everything that I could to ensure that the world that I'm leaving behind for them, the world that we're fighting for, is just a little bit closer to that future that we all hope for and not the destruction that we all dread. My story, when it comes to environmental justice, it definitely starts back home in New Orleans. The hurricanes, when I was growing up, these storms would come by, and it was maybe about 3 days you'd be away from home, and then you would go back. You'd be thankful that you were off of school, and you'd go back. Of course, you had like a little bit of picking up, but there really wasn't that much. And that was until 2005 and the storm, Hurricane Katrina. And since then, we have mass graves. We have one that is a memorial for 1,100 people back home in New Orleans. We have so many times where so many people are buried, whether there are these storms, whether there are these pandemics, these epidemics, not just COVID, but even, talking about HIV and like all of the things that we're dealing with. So environmentally, and viruses and everything that's coming together to make life more challenging for us. We hope that we are working towards a better world, a better time, and and we hope that it's not so much of a burden that we're leaving behind for the young people that are here standing. So I just wanted to bring those into mind. And as I bring those into mind, I also wanted to talk about how much, not just resilience, but the resistance of indigenous people. Us being here, us existing on this land that has held us for thousands of years. Just being here, even after this year of COVID-19, where we were disproportionately impacted by infection rates and mortality rates. Even despite all of that, even despite the paper genocide policies of the Trump administration, I found out today, looking at the 2020 census data, that here within Massachusetts, where we might have the least population across the United States of American Indians, our population as of the 2020 census has grown. And it has grown in such a way we have increased the population of American Indians here within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts by over 85%. And we now stand over 94,000 strong here in Massachusetts. Here in Suffolk County, we are over 49% increase in population. And so when we say, not on my host tribe's land, not on my relatives' land, not where my ancestors are buried, those voices are that much more amplified. We are not going away, we are not dying off, and we will be louder even in front of the State House where they have so much trying to keep people safe, but they still have the most dangerous weapon still flying on top of that flagpole, that racist flag. And we will continue to do the work until that flag comes down. We will continue to do the work to pass all of the bills in the Massachusetts Indigenous Legislative Agenda, making sure that there is an education commission for our youth, making sure that Native history, the real history of this land, gets taught in public schools, not just for the sake of our children, but for everybody here. We should teach history unvarnished, and people should know the scientific connection between white supremacy and climate change. Also in those schools, take down those Native mascots. Also in those schools and across this Commonwealth, replace Christopher Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. And while we are talking about what's in the ground, the resources that are in the ground, but our ancestors that are buried, the sacred objects that are there, graves that have been pilfered and that those artifacts are in public collections. We want those objects to go home to the original peoples. And so that is what we are fighting for in this round of the Massachusetts Indigenous Legislative Agenda. And we stand in solidarity with all demands of this action. So I thank you all. Please visit United American Indians of New England, North American Indian Center of Boston. Tikach, take care. Thank you.
And let's hear it one more time for Jean-Luc, everyone. And let's hear it for all of our amazing speakers today. Sudi, Alice as well, all three of you, thank you so much for showing up today. Thank you all for showing up to support us. Let's hear it.